That's why I really like your offering, Grant, with tokens as a unit of measure of translations and not words or characters. No localization person would measure translations in tokens. It's not a unit of language. It's something that the engineers will probably like very much.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Welcome to the Straker Podcast. We've got a great guest on the podcast today, Konstantin. He's very well known in the industry, and from our perspective, probably puts in some of the most accurate insights as to what's actually happening, as opposed to Konstantin. If you just want to talk a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, and then we've got a few interesting questions we'd like to ask you over the next sort of 30-40 minutes.
Let me answer your question. So who am I and what I do?
Yes.
In short, I'm a localization industry researcher, by which I mean kind of a journalist who looks into what is happening and writes about it on LinkedIn. Before I used to write in respectable publications. Now it's LinkedIn. And 3 years ago, I started to walk the walk of the people whose money I always followed and became an entrepreneur. The good journalist follows the money, so I followed into actually trying to make some of my own.
If we can start with, because there's a couple of, there's always a few sort of research groups in the industry that come out with growth trajectories over the next sort of 3 to 5 years. And there's two out at the moment that are quite different in their endpoint, or potentially different in their endpoint, which is CSA and NIMSY. So what's your, because you sit across a wide breadth of the industry, what's your view of where you think it's going to go?
Well, that discussion is a very interesting one, and obviously the industry will always go up because it consists of smart, intelligent people who always find a way. Right, so if the translation door is closed, they'll climb in through the interpreting window or another service. So the entrepreneurs, they might face temporary issues with revenue, but eventually, if you have good people in place, if you're researching your market, if you're doing your homework, the company will grow. However, the translation bit in particular is now in jeopardy. It's the people who do translation who are in the most precarious position ever, because so many signs and signals coming from different companies, LSPs, that the revenues are dropping.
Yeah.
And normally the voices of the companies which have a decrease are the loudest. So if we go back 5 years, 7 years, a guy like me would research these companies, and in any given year, 20, 30, sometimes 40% of LSPs would drop in revenue. So that's normal, that some companies don't grow. Not everybody wins. Right?
No, correct, exactly. Yeah.
But so translation goes down.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurs will find a way and grow. Yeah. And this is the consensus point for every person in the industry, that we will grow. Just who are we growing and looking in the future? That remains the question. And the translation is normally 60-70% of this revenue represented in any of the three analyst companies. Used to be 80% translation, but then they started counting interpreting better. It became a kind of pie with interpreting. Then they started counting dubbing and subtitling better, and then they realized that there's also dubbing and subtitling. And some companies like like the yellow companies, they might take all of the revenue into consideration, and CSA would try to remove double and triple counting, because a translation company, when they sell to the customers, they would then buy from another translation company, and that revenue would be counted twice. So there's a few ways. Like if you look at Slater's number, 27 billion, it's usually TAM, or target addressable market. It's very, very conservative. And being conservative sits well with investors, right? They like to hear that we're cautious, we're conservative, we don't go into big numbers. And the problem is that there's no reliable data. There's no way how you can really get the accurate numbers, and then just pick what you count. Do you count all of the services? Do you count by the number of providers? Do you want to be optimistic and to have a number of $100 billion in language services by the year 2030? So this really sits well with certain minds. Grant, isn't it cool to say to an investor, we're a part of the market which will be 100 billion in 5 years from now?
I think it is. I think it's cooler to kind of say that ultimately we're, this is an industry that has led around AI, is pretty much the canary in the coal mine in terms of an industry that will be impacted by AI, can adapt with AI, and then can grow with AI. So I think that's more of the story. And again, it's about how you segment that, the portions of this. There's no doubt that as AI impacts the industry, will affect the price per content volume. And that will have an impact on the overall revenue number for the industry. But as you say, at the same time, people will adapt. There'll be new services that come off the side of that. There'll be new AI related stuff. There'll be new business models that come out of it.
If you said, okay, it's 2030, what does the industry? Because what does the industry look like? If we're 5 or 6 years away from today, irrespective of how people size it and stuff, and you said, okay, what does the industry look like?
How does it look like in 5 years? Difficult to say. A new mix of services. The translation as a need doesn't go away, right? It's just in the past couple of years been a big replacement of a human in the loop, human at the end, human reviewed translation with fully automated, and machines do 10,000 times more work per day than human translators do. So obviously more and more of the language services of today will be automated, but companies will still be able to extract revenue from that.
Yeah, but I guess your view then, looking at that, is though that the current pricing models and the structures around paying per word and if you look at the per word rates always being linked back to how much a translator wants to make as an hourly rate, if you consider that and stuff, then those numbers are probably cascading down towards a very low number, if not zero, but close to it.
Mm-hmm.
So just on that, and I think this is one thing that I've picked up from the Taos conferences. So when I came back from Taos, I sort of made a list of, like competitive analysis. So who's attended, who had, AI or machine translation, or when did they start to sort of announce that they had an AI team on LinkedIn and those sorts of things. So I sort of made a list, and I just sort of ticked some boxes to say that there were a number of leading companies or bigger companies sitting up here in the top here where they had in-house machine translation. They provided MT and sold it as a service to other LSPs. They had MT experts in-house. So, probably a similar model to what you're doing with Custom.MT. They were model builders. Maybe they had a quality estimation engine, etc. So, some obvious ones in there. So Taos, for example, they're not an LSP, but they provide machine translation data. And if you look at, even from the Straker viewpoint, we were sitting down here. We used we consumed our MT from other providers who were building advanced models for us. We partnered with companies that were doing it. We integrated that into our platform to give us a commercial benefit out to our customers by the way that we mixed both the machine translation and the humans, because that was the bit that we're putting together. Now, this is, say, 2020. This is sort of what the industry looked like in my mind, and just looking through LinkedIn and a few other things. Now, the interesting thing when we've gone to Taos for this year is that so many companies now in this sort of 15 to 20 technology companies that are providing services are now ticking all of these blue boxes down here. So, if I look at Straker, we straight away, as soon as LLMs were there, we started to build an in-house AI team. We didn't even have to hire new staff. We actually had all the staff there, and we had the ecosystem and the platforms, but we started to build. So we started to look at, how were we going to build models? What models were we going to work with? What data did we have to train these engines? And I think looking at it, a lot of other LSPs, sort of those mid-size LSPs, have done the same thing, which tells me from a ecosystem viewpoint, we're all basically getting the same weapons to a certain point, right? So
yes,
everybody's getting the same weapons. But to your earlier point, this is an enormous market, right? So there's probably 30 billion, whichever analyst company you want to look at in terms of market sizing. There is an enormous opportunity for probably the 20 companies that are hanging out at Taos, who are really interested in models, interested in building models, got the data, sharing, like buying up technology off each other, to really target that $30 billion worth of revenue that sits out there in that sort of mid-range of companies that are looking for an AI solution. And so that was, I think, the big takeaway from me. We're all getting the same weapons, and so it all comes down to what battles you want to fight. It's a huge market, and so what verticals do you go into? What models do you build that are very specific to a, in a Straker sense, I know, we're very strong in, say, financial services in Japanese. We've got a very strong model on that. We won't have models for every single language pair, every subject domain, but we can be very strong in certain areas, which are enormous markets. So, is that your take, Konstantin? Is sort of how you see it, that these companies that had sort of an advantage and now sort of got a lot of competitors starting to come in and play in the same space?
Well, to follow up on this, Grant, not only it's the same weapons, it's also they're made from the same metal, right? Or the same material. You can be a small LSP. You can take OpenAI, build a script, and get it into your workflow, and it's probably the same technology or almost the same as the top company out there. It's a lot of the same ground because the people are using the same model. And if you're not using OpenAI, then good luck. You're competing against OpenAI use, and it's probably the best model out there for many purposes. Are you competing as Straker translations with DeepL? Yeah, I think so. Sometimes. Are you competing as Straker translation sometimes with 11 Labs, which are making voices?
Yeah,
probably, right? You could dub videos with your platform, right? And you can dub it with maybe, I don't know, PaperCup or any other technology company specialized in the field. So there's a lot of convergence on the vendor side, and this destroys the differentiation. So how do you differentiate in the age where a lot of the models are the same, a lot of the offering is the same and not specialized, like it used to be? Several years ago, I made the NIMSI Atlas with all the different categories, all the boxes. Here is quality measurement tools. Here is this type of TMS. Here is that type of TMS. Now it's becoming like more, I am the platform and I have all the components, right? So it's more about having one platform which covers everything, one ring to rule them all. So I totally agree with you. And the next kind of thing that a company providing language services or technology needs to worry about is how they're different, how do they stand out in this market, where every vendor offers what they offer.
Yeah.
And, what do you think about this? I have an idea, but let's hear how do you think the companies can differentiate? A better model for legal Japanese, or is there another way?
Well, I think there's a couple of points on this. So the first one is, there's a convergence of vendors at the high end in the technology company space. There are also 20,000 other vendors that are small LSPs holding on to $30 billion of revenue who are not in this, who are not going to probably be in this game, I don't think. I mean, I guess I get some insight into this and just the sheer number of inbound requests we get for companies to sell that are for sale. And probably this year I've seen more than ever from your mid-size, $2 to $3 million LSP. In fact, I got 2 this morning. Right, just 2 more this morning. I've probably had, I reckon, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've had maybe 6 or 7, right, from various brokers around there. That's the most. I mean, it's really so. There's a lot of LSPs that aren't so comfortable or confident that they're actually going to get the technology to be able to stay in this battle. Is my thinking on this.
Like they raise their hands, they give up.
Yeah, and I don't think it's. I mean, I don't think it's quite as easy as just, hey, you could just use ChatGPT and plug that in and get there. Yes, I think you can use tools, and you could use a memo queue who are obviously plugging some of this in, and you're going to get some of that value coming through some of the tools that they use. I don't think there's any doubt in that. But I look at the amount of investment and automation and other things that it takes for this to happen. And the other big thing that I think is going to happen is the change in content channels and flows. So you're right. You've got all these LSPs that are close to the customer, but where content flows is changing. It's flowing into platforms, right? It's not flowing through the same way that content used to flow through here. People aren't just taking a document for their website and sending a Word document and saying, here's my content for my website, send it back. That website is part of an automated system, and there's a connector that's driving that. And so, you've got to have that connector to connect into that particular tool or that space. So I think that you will see content flows change, and that will put pressure on these LSPs. And as the top line value drops in terms of, the amount of, I think when we entered this industry, it was maybe 12 cents a word was an average price. Let's just say 2011, it was 12 cents a word. By the time you've got to, post-edit, very mature post-edit, which is human machine translation, maybe it's 3 or 4 cents. I think with AI translation, is it going to be 1 or 2 cents? Is it going to half again? And that puts a lot of pressure on revenue flows for these smaller companies from the cost base that they have to support. I mean, do you think that that's an accurate assessment on the way that LSPs are sort of structured?
Well, the pricing is a very, very interesting topic, and also very sensitive. Every time you write about pricing on a public platform, and if you say translation is going to cost 2 cents, 3 cents on a public platform, expect a visitation from the associations, and they're not going to mince polite words with you. So I've been there on the receiving end. It's not easy to discuss pricing looking forward. Even though we could be forward looking, we must be very cautious when it discuss this, because otherwise we get the burn.
Yeah.
Now,
do you think though that the actual, because I saw you wrote in the summary you did after Taos, that even the whole pricing models, like the concept of the economic unit being a word, becomes effectively redundant.
no,
you don't think so?
Our world of translation is extremely fragmented. In some parts of the world, you can see the 3 cents. In other parts of the world, it's still 20 or 30. I'm sure if you look at the price per word in big government institutions, they might be spending much more than that, right?
Yeah.
There's always the premium market, the boutique market, and some customers don't want to use MT or Gen AI at all, or in the medical sector, they would pay 30 cents per word, but get the human process with 2 or 3 pairs of eyes running.
Do you think though that the economic argument gets so strong that and the pressure? Because like one of the things that we could say is that because AI is everywhere, everyone looks now, it's become extremely visible in upper parts of companies, and so are they, irrespective of whether the people doing the job downstream, the local managers and stuff in these companies might not want to change their process, that they get pressure from above to do it anyway.
They have other costs. If they spend 50 million on translation, that's a drop in the ocean, because to launch a drug to the market is $2 billion, right?
Yeah,
it's not insignificant, but going from 50 million in spend to 30 million doesn't change their.
Yeah, it's a small. So a question for you, because I'm really interested in your take on this, is like if you look at the industry, if you think about the industry in terms of a bell curve around like number of companies and size of those companies, right? And then on the other axis is where the revenue sits. I think historically you would say that most of the revenue, well, a good chunk of the revenue was sitting up the top of the bell curve. Right? So
I made that calculation, and I made it in a few countries in the pricing studies specifically, right? So it would be maxing out the volume of business would be maxing out in middle up, and it would peter out in the boutique market, and the low costers that didn't manage to get as much money in as much in volume of business and in profit as the middle up companies in the past.
Yeah.
So Grant is showing a, how would you call this? Grant?
So I wouldn't say
bell curve.
Yeah, this is not based on real data, or it's basically just an indicative chart that I think is just there to say that if you look at the industry and you go that, at the top end, anybody that spends more than $1 million annually is a complex customer, because they look at an internal team. They're a smaller number, obviously, of companies, and they're not as many. But they have more complex needs, and they need to be dealt with a certain way. If you look at the middle of that bell curve is kind of a sweet spot, really, in the world of AI and automation, because yes, I mean, if you can get to that point, they wouldn't have an internal translation team. They might have one person. They're going to use connectors to get the content there. They make decisions relatively easy. You're right. A lot of those customers are currently in a relationship, probably with an LSP, and that sort of 30 billion of sort of non-top end revenue, But I guess what we're seeing is that those sorts of companies are out there going, well, AI should be impacting the cost of my translation services. And you're right. They're maybe not a healthcare provider, that's done a new product. They're an engineering company that turns over $30 million and spends $100,000 on translations for some of their products. Those customers have got some cost pressures at the moment, and they're all looking out there going, okay, we've got to look right through our P&L, and we're looking at every line, and we're going, we're spending $100,000 or $200,000 at the moment on translation services. How do I cut that down by a third using AI? Because I'm seeing AI everywhere, and surely this is one industry. Yes, I mean, do you think that that's true? And again, I've just put like the from complex to sort of fully automated. If somebody's spending less than 10K, you should be able to now with an AI agent fully automate that.
Right. So this bell curve here looks like a camel.
Yeah.
The research I've done in the past in multiple countries, like 3 or 4 different countries, and it was always the same conclusion. It's more like, what would I say? It's So the top of the curve would be where you have the high touch on the screen. So it would be for middle up segment, above average pricing generated most of the business. Now you have price sensitive customers, and if they're very price sensitive, they drop the human review. They go, let's machine translate everything. If they're quality and risk sensitive, risk would be more than quality, then they will try to find this ideal combination, the most cost efficient combination. Like gamers buy PCs, they don't go for the most expensive PC possible. They have all these benchmarks to find the most value for their money, the biggest bang for the buck. And this type of customer will probably grow in volume. So maybe the future looks a little bit higher with the center of the curve.
Yeah, I mean,
But still today it's not there yet. Today it's still the where you have high touch is the most abundant category, the deepest point in the ocean.
right.
Yeah. And do you think that's gonna, because obviously if the value of this translation services particularly starts to decrease, that value, where the value sits in the industry, moves in that bell curve, where you think it still stays, as you call it, the deepest point in the ocean? Does it still stay at the top end?
I think the amount of revenue in human services far outstrips the amount of revenue in automated, right? In the past, it has been maybe 50 to 1, 100 to 1, 200 to 1. Now, this is the explosion of automated right now, which we're witnessing, and the ratio could get down. And 6 years ago, my namesake Konstantin Savinkov, he said, there's going to be a Jevons paradox, which means translation is less expensive, so people will consume much more of that. However, I have some reservations whether it will really cause an explosion, because what happens now is that the buyers of translation, the old buyer, the localization departments, right? If your company spends 10 million on translations or even $1 million, you usually have some person in charge of that who controls the spend and the quality and works with the relevant workflows. What was happening with the localization departments in many companies recently is that they're under pressure to implement AI and reduce their budget. They implement AI, they reduce their budget, but the money goes away to another cost center, right? They say, I've been efficient. I cut the cost by 10%. That goes towards the engineers or the marketers.
Yeah.
And the localization department doesn't keep that money to translate more. They continue growing in volume. They do more with less, but not explosively so. And they bleed power, they bleed money every year. If they find a way to reverse it, or if the entrepreneurs in localization find a great story, a great pitch, a great way to work with the new cost centers, the product owners, the user experience leads, the CPOs, the model builders, then the revenue will start coming in. But at the moment, I think the localization advocates, they're struggling a little bit in this change. They're not using that wave well enough to increase their budget, increase their spending, to make more waves inside the corporations. They need help in how to reposition themselves, sell themselves internally, and become a big globalization story like we've been a few years back.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot a little bit because it's a very interesting view. What do you think is the future of like TMS platforms?
Well, the TMS platforms essentially are entrepreneurs that build software to automate the work of linguists.
Great.
And they've been hit in the head by a truck a couple of years ago of OpenAI, which said you either jump on the track now or you get under the wheels.
Yeah.
And they approached it with different kind of.
It's a different strategy around how they actually are trying to. Yeah, very true.
Right. They have customer access. They have customer accounts. But the technology is increasingly becoming old school and obsolete. They have a lot of good technology under the hood. File filters, workflows, management parts, connectors. Right. All of this is important, and it doesn't get disrupted by the models. But a new company coming into the space can become the TMS of tomorrow. Right. So what is going on right now is that the incumbents are trying to maintain a grip on the consolidating market, and we've seen TMS consolidating quite fast. They're growing quite fast, 20, 30, 40% per year. So they'll be continuing in growth, albeit at a slower rate. It's still some window for opportunity for another company with a cool engineering team, maybe coming from an LSP side. That's why, Grant, you're putting 8 million per year into engineers, because there is the window of opportunity to redefine that space and to carve yourself a very nice piece of it. And I think the TMS are very successful and will remain successful in the next few years, but with enough savviness, enough marketing presence, a new way how to explain this, it's possible to redefine that space, and that's exactly what you're doing.
So if I'm listening to what you're saying, though, you're not looking at the industry in, say, 5 years as going through like fundamental shifts. You're saying that there's some things where AI is going to have an impact, but a lot of the existing structures will persist. Is that a reasonable summation?
The people won't change. The workflows will be redefined a little bit, but the essential relationships of vendor side, buy side, and how they negotiate, 5 years is not enough to completely throw it out of the window.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another question. Sorry, Grant, mate.
Sorry, Konstantin. If you segmented that, I mean, obviously we're talking about the technology end of the market here. If you segmented that into the sort of big LSP, traditional LSP, do you think there would be any change in that side of the market?
The traditional LSP are continuing to eat each other, right? And continue to heavily invest in technology. If you look at technology platforms and programs at TransPerfect, RWS, Accolade, WeLocalize, Lionbridge, etc., each one of them spends millions and millions and millions in developing TMS and other systems. But the investors behind them, they want to become the king of the hill, and they want to further consolidate the market between a smaller number of players. And the roll-ups are going to continue. So look, in 1, 2, 3 years in the future, the top of the market is more consolidated than ever before.
Yeah, I'm really thinking of the lower end. So yeah, I agree. All of those companies you just talked about all have technology and technology teams and investment in technology. I'm really talking about your traditional LSP that has 4 million in revenue, 20, 30 staff, probably 2 to 3 main customers. Those customers must seriously be under risk now from the technology. I mean, that's the appeal of investment in the industry, right? Like there's been a lot of investment. If DeepL can raise 2 billion and they've got models and data, and we've all got models and data, and we've got customer relations, but those smaller companies, they can't invest the same level of technology investment, surely.
That's why they're so lucky that it's super easy to use OpenAI. You prompt it, and it gives you some useful results immediately. I'll give you an example of an LSP in the UK. I don't want to mention names, but a woman-led company, 4 or 5 million in revenue, serving great customers like the automotive makers in the United Kingdom. They just increased prices and they took ChatGPT and they rolled out a content generator, multilingual content generation, and they spent on it, I don't know, not even 100K, not even maybe 50K to build that generator, because it's so easy to use the model and to put it in a production scenario. They are not struggling; they're growing.
And did they? So with that content generator, you're saying that they're not going to translate; they're doing direct content generation, and
we continue to translate, but because it just takes one engineer and access to one API to get into the GenAI game, they get into the GenAI game easily, and they continue to operationalize with human review, the copywriters checking what the model has generated. And that's what the customer wants, the personalized service, being working with a team which is very close to them, not a faceless, gigantic corporation, but a specific team on the ground which knows their needs. And if that team can roll in an engineer, and that engineer can prompt their way to success, they can just prompt it till they make it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we've got some experience with prompting and models, and we do see a difference. It does take a while to prompt through, for example, and you're right, in a very specific subject domain, to get the right model trained, and then to get automated post edit, which is this process of using multiple models to review each other's output. To run that, we have seen it does take a while.
You're right, not everybody can do it.
Yeah. It takes a while, and again, everybody's got this that same technology available. So that's really interesting. Yeah, but I guess so it will be interesting to see. But I guess I see a lot of maybe, and that's the big,
absolutely. Many will die. And 20,000, Grant. This is I know where the number comes from, because my number is 250,000.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Because that is the question: is how many of those smaller companies? How do they? Because I mean, we even see, the discussions we're having with customers 6 months ago were fundamentally different from today. So if you started investing in something 6 months ago, you could actually have to completely rework it today because of the speed that the models move and things. I think probably one of the last questions for you, and maybe because you've got your own business and you're an entrepreneur yourself, you might answer this a certain way. But if you were looking at this industry as a greenfields opportunity, right? You had some investment, you had some capital, and you use, okay, if I want to build a company that can capture a significant valuation, like a DeepL, for example, what would you build?
And now I'm building an AI company called Custom.MT, Custom Machine Translation. And it has been founded 4 years ago. The name is already outdated because custom machine translation is no longer in fashion. Now everyone wants custom AI. I wonder whether
you'd have to call it custom LLM or
something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
I bought the domain custom GPT, but now I know it's should be custom LLM. Maybe a new domain every year. Oh, that's a $10 million question. Right? $10 million question.
Sure.
Very few things that people build today are defensible. You can build anything. You can build into automated dubbing, into automated translation, into automated interpreting. All of these services that have human volume behind them, there's always a technocrat who tries to disrupt them. And you can build for a lot of time, but the problem is, right now we're seeing this unprecedented wave of technology which tells you exactly nothing is defensible. OpenAI launched voices 2 weeks ago. It can now do machine interpretation, machine dubbing out of the box. And guess what? The voices from OpenAI are better than all the voices people have seen on the market before. A year ago, they released speech transcription, open source. You can download the model, you put it on your computer, and you have a model better than what professionals have been working on for decades, right? If you look back, even this week, Rev has open sourced the transcription model. Why did they do it? Right? They've worked on this model for years and they put millions of dollars into this because probably Whisper is out there and people just can download the model. Not very few things are defensible.
Yeah.
So looking forward, what can you build is probably not so much about the technology, but about having a cohesion and traction with a part of the market that is growing. The needs of the people will change, but your relationship with them will stay. And if you're doing really great work and solutions for localization and crowd, you know you will be serving them in the future. However, the power is slightly ebbing away, and the engineers are growing. The engineers in this recent wave got a big boost in confidence, and the CEOs are always ready to invest more money into the IT cost center. So looking into the future, a B2B company should be thinking about what do they build that the engineering people can consume 10 years, 20 years from now. That's why I really like your offering, Grant, with tokens as a unit of measure of translations and not words or characters. No localization and person would measure translations in tokens. It's not a unit of language. It's something that the engineers will probably like very much.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, well, I think that's just about getting as granular as you can, right? Because then the cost is, it's easier to define than just how much you can save a customer.
Yes, right. I can't imagine a localization person saying, "Hey, well, guess what? I did 4,000 tokens of translation today. I'm very productive."
No, you can't see that conversation happening.
Because tokens are really about saying that there are multiple LLM steps. There's that initial translation of volume. There is a quality estimation, which can be a very specific engine in terms of quality estimation, and we've played around with this a lot. And then there is also the automated post-edit. So you've got 3 different LLM engines doing different jobs that may have different rates. So it's a way to bundle all that together so that, again, if you could do multiple passes with an LLM till you get the right answer. No. That could cost you a lot of money feeding that in. I mean, I get in terms of predictions. Then when you look at, and it's a very difficult. I mean, between June TAUS and this October TAUS, the one thing that was obvious to me was just how many companies in that sort of 15 to 20 larger or mid-sized technology players in the industry had moved into some sort of production-ready platform, as opposed to just talking about it. And there were a lot of people talking about it in June, and then there was a lot more live in October. So I think we're in a sort of what they call a Red Queen scenario, which is like the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland. She's running flat out, but everybody's keeping pace. So unless you're investing heavily in AI and you're going you're running straight at it and you're going really hard, like you're just going to go backwards.
I think that's a representation of from a perspective of a person building technology, right? How do I defend myself from the advent of OpenAI and this generalist models or DeepL in the future? 1 million of DeepL's revenue wipes out 100 million of services revenue somewhere.
True.
Somebody is not getting those legal documents or financial documents to translate because the paralegal just DeepL'd them. And how do you defend yourself against that? So there's definitely the fear, but whether it is the right call to put all the chips down into proprietary technology these days is a risk. Is that risk that you take as a captain of the company? You take the chips and you say all in on technology. And I don't know if maybe TransPerfect will move all in on technology, right? They have great technology, but they didn't build the industry's biggest because they had better tech. They built it because they had a better sales system. Or take the second biggest company in the world, Sorensen, right? They represent the sign language interpreter in the United States. They do have the tech, but the secret is not in the better tech. It's the secret of continuously delivering and winning for the US government, etc. So if you look at the companies somewhere at the top, better technology or more investment in technology is not always the secret source. Rather, it's some cohesion with a specific market segment or a special way how they win those customers. Otherwise, if the tech was always the answer and the only answer, the person with the biggest technology bank would win. And that hasn't happened so far. However, the times are changing. And it's also something that you build over years, and it's not easy at all, I think. You know, Grant, you've built quite a few technology teams, and you bought some technology teams that were heavily invested in. So, you know, the secret sauce is not just the money. It's a lot more.
It's iteration. I think with technology, it's how you iterate through stuff. So so what we're seeing is new use cases come up for AI enabled tech in the industry, and so we're working with our customers to build that and iterate through it. And I think that customers are also still just getting their head around the impact. I think with post edit, when that came along and the first use of sort of scaled machine translation in a production process, customers were still nervous about the quality outcomes. I think now it's very different. Customers are completely aligned that this technology will help them. What they're trying to understand is how to apply it so that they mitigate the risks in terms of the quality outcomes, but get the best outcome from the productivity. And
it's we're lucky to be in this space at this time for linguistics and language to transform into the engine of global commerce, the engine of how computers think. It's like it's the paradise for all the mathematicians whose work went into building this moment. We're lucky to be people seeing this stuff.
No, look, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. It's so difficult to figure out what's happening and how quickly things are moving. And as I said, whenever you're posting stuff on LinkedIn, I think we always tend to find we agree a lot more than disagree with your takes on what's happening in the industry. So thank you very much for taking the time. It was over an hour, so it's we really appreciate you putting that long length of time in and having a chat with us.